The red coat was the first thing he saw, a small splash of color against the white and gray of the frozen road. The snow fell in soft, lazy flakes, covering the fields and the bare trees in silence. The sky hung low and heavy, the kind of afternoon that felt more like evening. And there, at the edge of the road, stood a little girl, alone. She could not have been older than 6. Her green backpack hung from her shoulders, slightly too big for her small frame. Her boots were planted firmly in the snow, but her body was still. She was not crying. She was not calling for help. She was just standing there, looking around slowly, carefully, as if she was trying to solve a puzzle she did not understand. There was no adult near her, no car parked on the side of the road, no house in sight, just the empty stretch of asphalt, the frozen fields, and the silence of a winter afternoon pressing down on everything. Then the growl of an engine broke through the quiet. A motorcycle appeared in the distance, moving steadily down the road. The rider was a large man, in a dark leather jacket, his face half hidden by a thick scarf, and a black helmet. His gloved hands gripped the handlebars loosely, and his posture was relaxed, the posture of someone who had ridden 1,000 roads just like this one. But as he came closer, his body shifted, his head turned slightly, his speed dropped. He had seen the red coat. He pulled the bike to the side of the road, the tires crunching softly against the snow. He killed the engine. The silence returned, heavier now, as if the world was holding its breath. He sat there for a moment, his eyes fixed on the little girl. She had not moved. She had not looked at him yet. She was still scanning the road, the trees, the empty space around her, looking for something, or someone. He swung his leg over the bike and stepped down. The snow crunched under his boots as he walked toward her, his steps slow and deliberate. He stopped a few feet away, not wanting to scare her. She turned then. Her eyes found his face. They were wide and green, and there was something in them that made his chest tighten. She did not run. She did not scream. She tilted her head slightly, studying him the way a child studies something new and unfamiliar. "Are you lost?" he asked. His voice was low and steady, but there was a gentleness in it that surprised even him. She blinked, her small lips pressed together for a moment. Then she spoke. "I was with my mom," she said, "but she told me to wait, and then she didn't come back." The words hung in the cold air between them. He felt something shift inside his chest, a tightness he had not expected. He looked around, scanning the road, the tree line, the distant curve where the asphalt disappeared. There was no car, no footprints leading away from where she stood, nothing but the snow and the silence. "How long have you been waiting?" he asked. She shrugged, the gesture small and uncertain. "I don't know. A long time." He crouched down, bringing himself to her eye level. The snow soaked into the knee of his jeans, but he did not notice. His eyes stayed on her face, on the calm way she looked at him, on the quiet bravery she was trying so hard to hold on to. He had seen that look before, a long time ago, in a mirror, in the eyes of a boy who had been left alone too many times to count, a boy who had learned to stop crying, to stop expecting anyone to come back. His heart pounded against his ribs. He knew he could not leave her here, but he also knew how this looked. A grown man, a biker, alone with a lost child on an empty road. No witnesses, no explanation. Every choice he made in the next few seconds would matter. Every word, every movement, every decision could be misunderstood. He glanced back at his bike, then at the road stretching in both directions. Empty, silent, cold. When he looked at her again, she was still watching him, waiting, trusting him in a way that made his throat tight. "What's your name?" he asked quietly. "Lily," she said. He nodded slowly. "Okay, Lily. My name is Marcus." He paused, choosing his next words carefully. "I'm going to help you find your mom, but I need you to stay right here with me for a minute. Can you do that?" She nodded, her small chin dipping once. He reached for his phone, but before he could pull it from his pocket, he heard something, a sound in the distance, the low hum of an engine, getting closer. He turned his head, his eyes narrowing against the gray light. A dark van was coming down the road. The morning had been quiet, the kind of quiet that fools you into thinking everything will be fine. Rachel had woken Emma early, moving quickly through their small apartment like she did every weekday. She pulled the red coat from the closet, the one with the fuzzy hood that Emma loved, and helped her daughter zip it up. She brushed Emma's hair and tied it back with a small elastic. She checked her backpack twice, making sure her coloring book and crayons were inside. Then she buckled Emma into the car and drove through the cold morning streets to Grandma Dot's house. The goodbye at the door was fast, the way it always was when Rachel was running late for her shift at the diner. A quick hug, a kiss on the forehead, a promise to pick her up after work. Emma waved from the window as her mother's car disappeared down the road. But today was different. Grandma Dot had a medical appointment she could not miss. Her doctor had been firm about it. She had tried to reschedule, but there were no other openings for weeks. So she made a decision. She called her neighbor, Mrs. Peggy Ashford, and asked if she could watch Emma for just 2 hours, maybe 3 at the most. Mrs. Ashford agreed without hesitation. She had known the Holloway family for years. She had watched Rachel grow up. She had held Emma as a baby. Of course, she would help. Dot walked Emma across the snow-covered yard to Mrs. Ashford's back door. She handed over the green backpack and reminded Emma to be good. Emma nodded seriously, already looking past her grandmother toward the warmth inside. Mrs. Ashford welcomed her with a soft smile and a cup of hot cocoa. She set Emma up in the living room with her coloring book and a box of crayons. The television played softly in the background, some cartoon with talking animals. Emma sat on the floor, her small legs crossed, and began to color a picture of a dinosaur. She was careful to stay inside the lines. Mrs. Ashford settled into her chair near the window, a cup of tea warming her hands. She watched Emma for a while, smiling at the way the little girl tilted her head when she concentrated. Then she picked up her book and began to read. For a while, everything was peaceful. Then the phone rang. Mrs. Ashford set down her book and walked to the kitchen. She picked up the receiver and said hello. The voice on the other end was her daughter-in-law, and something in her tone made Mrs. Ashford's stomach drop before she even heard the words. There had been an accident. Her grandson, Tyler, had been hurt at school. He was on his way to the hospital. The details came fast and scattered. A fall from the playground. A head injury. They did not know how bad it was yet. Mrs. Ashford's legs felt weak. She gripped the edge of the counter and tried to breathe. Her daughter-in-law was crying. Mrs. Ashford was crying too, though she did not realize it at first. She paced the kitchen, asking questions, trying to understand, trying to figure out what she needed to do and how fast she could get to the hospital. For those 10 minutes, she forgot about Emma entirely. In the living room, Emma stopped coloring. She could hear Mrs. Ashford crying in the kitchen. The sound made her uncomfortable. She did not understand what was wrong, but she knew something bad had happened. She sat very still, her crayon frozen above the page, listening to the muffled sobs. She waited for Mrs. Ashford to come back, but the crying continued. Emma looked at the back door. She thought about her grandma. Dot's house was not far. She had walked there with her mother many times. She knew the way. She could go find her and tell her that Mrs. Ashford was sad. She stood up quietly. She put on her backpack. She zipped her red coat all the way to her chin. Then she walked to the back door, turned the handle, and slipped outside. No one saw her go. The snow was soft at first, almost fun to walk through. Her boots made little crunching sounds with each step. She followed the path she remembered, past the old fence, past the big tree with the bent branch, past the mailbox with the faded numbers. But the path looked different in winter. The landmarks she remembered were buried or bare. The houses all looked the same, covered in white. After 20 minutes of walking, Emma stopped. She looked around slowly. Nothing was familiar anymore. She did not know where she was. She walked a little farther until she reached the edge of a road she did not recognize. She stopped there. She waited. She believed someone would come. Back at Mrs. Ashford's house, the phone call finally ended. Mrs. Ashford wiped her eyes with a trembling hand and took a deep breath. She needed to call Dot. She needed to explain. She turned around and walked toward the living room. "Emma," she called. Silence. She stepped into the room. The coloring book lay open on the floor, a green crayon resting beside it. The television still played softly. "Emma, honey, where are you?" She searched the house. The bathroom, the bedroom, the closet. Her voice grew louder, sharper, more desperate with each empty room. Then she saw the back door. It was open, just a few inches, letting in a thin stream of cold air. The little red coat was gone. The road stretched out ahead of him, gray and empty, the kind of road that asked nothing and offered even less. Cole Brannigan leaned into the curve, feeling the cold bite through his jacket as the bike hummed beneath him. The snow had stopped falling, but the sky still hung low and heavy, pressing down on the frozen fields like a weight that would not lift. He had been riding since dawn. 2 towns over, past the old mill and the abandoned gas station, there was a cemetery on a hill. His mother was buried there, next to a pine tree she had loved. Every year on this date, the anniversary of her passing, Cole made the ride. He brought fresh flowers when he could find them. He sat by her headstone and talked to her the way he used to when she was alive. He told her about the road, about the club, about the things he was too proud to say to anyone else. But today, his mind was somewhere else. He was thinking about Lily. His sister had been 7 years old when she disappeared. Cole was 12. He remembered the day with a clarity that time had never softened. She had been walking home from a friend's house, just 4 blocks away. The sun was still up. The neighborhood was quiet. She knew the way. She had walked it 100 times before. She never arrived. The first hour, no one worried. Kids got distracted. They stopped to look at bugs or chase cats or talk to neighbors. But when the sun started to set and Lily still had not come home, something changed in his mother's voice. She called the friend's house. She called the neighbors. She walked the route herself, calling Lily's name until her voice went hoarse. The police came that night. Then the search parties. Then the volunteers with flashlights and dogs in desperate hope. They combed the woods behind the neighborhood. They checked every shed, every basement, every parked car. Posters went up on telephone poles and grocery store windows. Lily's face stared out from every corner of town, smiling in her school picture, frozen in time. She was never found. Cole remembered the way his father changed after that. The silence that filled the house like smoke. The bottles that appeared on the kitchen counter and never seemed to empty. His father stopped talking to him, stopped talking to anyone. He sat in his chair by the window and stared at nothing, as if he was waiting for something that would never come. His mother held on longer. She kept Lily's room exactly the way it was. She washed the sheets every week. She set a place for her at the table on holidays. But the light in her eyes dimmed a little more each year, until one morning Cole woke up and realized it was gone completely. She died of a heart attack when Cole was 26. The doctors said it was sudden, unexpected. But Cole knew the truth. Her heart had been breaking for 14 years. It just finally gave out. After the funeral, Cole sold the house. He could not live there anymore. The walls held too many ghosts. He bought a motorcycle with the money he had saved, packed a single bag, and rode until the road ran out. He found a club in the next state. Brothers who did not ask questions. Men who had their own scars, their own silences, their own reasons for riding. They gave him a name, Shepherd, because of the way he looked out for the younger members, the way he always seemed to know when someone was struggling. Over the years, he quietly joined efforts to help find missing children. He rode with search parties. He handed out flyers. He showed up at vigils and fundraisers and awareness events. He never talked about why. He never wanted praise or recognition. He just needed to do something, anything, to make sure no other family felt what his had felt. But it was never enough. The guilt stayed with him like a second shadow. He had been home that day. He could have walked with her. He could have kept her safe. He had not, and that failure lived inside him like a stone he could not swallow. As he rode now, his mind drifted to Lily. He wondered, as he always did, what she would look like now. She would be in her 30s. Maybe she had a family of her own. Maybe she was happy somewhere, living a life he could not imagine. Or maybe she was gone, truly gone, and he would never know what happened to her. The road curved ahead. The trees thinned out, and then he saw it. A flash of red against the white snow. A small figure standing at the edge of the road, alone. His chest tightened before his mind caught up. His hands moved without thought, squeezing the brakes, guiding the bike to the shoulder. The engine growled and then went quiet. He sat there for a moment, staring at the little girl in the red coat. She was not moving. She was just standing there, looking around, slowly, like she was waiting for someone who was not coming. His heart pounded against his ribs. He did not know her story yet. He did not know her name. But his body knew something his mind had not yet accepted. That little girl was in trouble, and he could not look away. Cole swung his leg over the bike and stepped down slowly. His boots pressed into the snow, and the cold wrapped around him like a second skin. He did not move toward her right away. He had learned, through years of working with frightened children at charity events, that his size and appearance could be terrifying if he approached too fast. A man his height, with a thick beard and a leather jacket and arms covered in tattoos, could look like a monster to a child who did not know any better. So he stopped a few feet from the bike. He held his hands where she could see them. He let her look at him. Emma turned her head. Her green eyes moved across his face, his jacket, the chrome of the motorcycle behind him. She did not flinch. She did not step back. She studied him the way a child studies something new and strange, with more curiosity than fear. He took another step, then another. He lowered himself slowly, kneeling in the snow about 6 feet from where she stood, close enough to talk, far enough to give her space. The cold soaked through his jeans, but he did not move. "Hey there," he said softly. His voice was low and steady, the kind of voice he used when he talked to the kids at the fundraisers. Calm, gentle, no sudden moves. Emma blinked at him. Her small hands gripped the straps of her backpack. "Are you lost too, mister?" The question hit him like a fist to the chest. He felt the air leave his lungs. For a moment, he could not speak. The words echoed in his mind, turning over and over, finding places inside him he had tried to keep locked away. "Are you lost too?" He thought of Lily. He thought of the years he had spent searching for something he could not name. The endless roads, the empty nights, the way he kept moving because stopping meant feeling, and feeling meant drowning in everything he had lost. Was he lost? In many ways, yes. He had been lost for 32 years. But he steadied himself. He pushed the memories back down where they belonged. This was not about him. This was about the little girl standing in front of him, alone in the snow, waiting for someone to help her. "No, sweetheart," he said gently. "I'm not lost, but I think maybe you are. Is that right?" Emma nodded slowly. Her chin dipped once, then again. "What's your name?" he asked. "Emma," she said. Her voice was soft, almost a whisper. "That's a pretty name. My name is Cole." He shifted slightly, keeping his posture open and relaxed. "Emma, can you tell me where you live? Or where your mommy is?" Emma's brow furrowed. She looked down at her boots, then back up at him. "I was at Mrs. Ashford's house. She was sad, so I left. I was trying to walk to my grandma's house, but the snow made everything look different." She paused, her lower lip trembling just slightly. "I don't know where I am now." Cole felt his chest tighten. A child this young, alone, in temperatures that were dropping by the minute. This was a crisis. Every second she stayed out here increased the danger. Hypothermia could set in faster than most people realized, especially in a child this small. But he also understood the danger of the situation for himself. He was a large man, a biker, alone on an empty road with a little girl he had never met. If someone drove past right now and saw them together, the wrong conclusions could be drawn instantly. He could be accused of something terrible. He could be arrested. He could lose everything. He had seen it happen before. Good men destroyed by suspicion. Reputations shattered in seconds. The world did not always reward people for doing the right thing. But he looked at Emma's face. He saw the way she was trying so hard to be brave. The way her small body shivered inside her red coat. The way her eyes searched his, looking for someone she could trust. He could not walk away. He would not. He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out his phone. The screen lit up, and he glanced at the signal bar. Nothing. Not a single bar. He held the phone higher, moved it left and right. Still nothing. He looked down the road in both directions. Empty. The gray sky stretched over the frozen fields, and the silence pressed in from every side. No cars, no houses, no help in sight. The temperature was dropping. He could feel it in the air, in the way the cold was starting to cut through his jacket. If he did not get her somewhere warm soon, things could go very bad very quickly. He had to make a choice, and he had to make it now. He looked back at Emma. She was still watching him, her small face pale against the white snow. "Emma," he said quietly, "I'm going to help you find your grandma. But first I need you to trust me. Can you do that?" She stared at him for a long moment. Then, slowly, she nodded. Somewhere behind them, far down the road, a new sound began to rise. An engine, getting closer. Cole stood up slowly from the snow. His decision was made. He could not leave her here. He could not wait for a car that might never come down this empty stretch of road. The temperature was dropping fast, and Emma's cheeks had turned too red. Her breath came out in small white clouds that hung in the cold air before disappearing. He looked down at her and kept his voice soft. "Emma, I'm going to help you find your family. But it's very cold out here, and we need to get you somewhere warm. There's a gas station a few miles back. Would you be okay sitting on my motorcycle with me, just for a short ride? Emma's eyes moved to the motorcycle. She studied the chrome and the leather seat and the handlebars. Then she looked back at Cole. Her small face was serious. Is it scary? She asked. It can feel a little loud, Cole said honestly. But I'll go slow, and I promise I won't take you anywhere scary. I just want to get you warm and find someone who can help us call your mom. Emma thought about this. She looked at the motorcycle one more time. Then she looked at Cole's face, searching for something. Whatever she found there seemed to satisfy her. She nodded. Cole moved carefully. He walked to the bike and swung his leg over the seat. Then he turned and reached down for her. His large hands wrapped around her small frame, and he lifted her gently, setting her on the seat in front of him. Her legs dangled, too short to reach anything. He unzipped his leather jacket and pulled it off his shoulders. The cold hit him immediately, cutting through his flannel shirt like a knife. But he did not hesitate. He wrapped the jacket around Emma, tucking it around her small body until she was almost lost inside the heavy leather. The jacket smelled like motor oil and old roads. But it was warm, and that was all that mattered. Hold on to the handlebars, he told her. Keep your hands inside the jacket as much as you can. Emma gripped the bars with her small fingers. Cole reached around her to take control, his arms forming a protective cage. He started the engine, and the motorcycle rumbled to life beneath them. Emma flinched at the sound but did not cry. Here we go, Cole said quietly. Nice and slow. He pulled onto the road and began riding toward the gas station he had passed a few miles back. The wind was bitter against his exposed arms, but he kept his speed steady. He could feel Emma shivering against his chest, and he tried to block as much of the cold as he could with his body. Back in town, everything had changed. Mrs. Ashford stood in her kitchen, the phone pressed to her ear, her voice high and breaking. She had already called 911 and told them everything. A 6-year-old girl, missing, last seen in her living room. The back door was open. She did not know how long Emma had been gone. The dispatcher asked her to stay calm. Mrs. Ashford could not stay calm. She paced the floor, tears streaming down her face, repeating the same words over and over. She should have been watching. She should have locked the door. She should have done something. At the diner across town, Rachel was carrying a tray of plates when her phone rang. She almost did not answer. She was in the middle of the lunch rush, and her manager had already warned her about personal calls. But something made her stop. Something made her pull the phone from her apron pocket and look at the screen. It was Mrs. Ashford's number, Rachel answered. The first word she heard made her blood turn to ice. The plates slipped from her hands and crashed to the floor. Coffee splattered across the tiles. Customers turned and stared. Rachel did not notice any of it. She was already running for the door, her apron still tied around her waist, her keys clutched in her shaking hand. Grandma Dot was just pulling into her driveway when her phone rang. She had finished her appointment and was looking forward to picking up Emma and making her favorite soup for dinner. She answered with a smile on her face. The smile disappeared. Mrs. Ashford's voice came through the speaker, broken by sobs. Dot's hand went to her chest. She felt like she could not breathe. At the sheriff's office, a deputy was dispatched to the area. But resources were stretched thin. A winter storm warning had been issued, and most of the officers were already dealing with accidents on the main highway. The deputy headed out alone, lights flashing, scanning the empty roads. A little girl was missing, and only one person knew where she was. Cole did not know any of this. He did not know that the police were already searching. He did not know that Emma's mother was speeding through town with tears on her face. He only knew that the child in front of him was cold and scared and far from home. As he rounded a curve in the road, a sheriff's cruiser passed him going the other direction. The deputy's eyes were fixed straight ahead, scanning the roadside. He did not notice the motorcycle. He did not see the small figure wrapped in the oversized leather jacket. Cole watched the cruiser disappear in his side mirror. He did not think anything of it. He just kept riding, his arms wrapped around Emma, his eyes fixed on the road ahead. The gas station was close now. He could see the faded sign in the distance. He did not see the dark van that had pulled off the road a quarter-mile behind them. The gas station appeared through the gray haze. A small, weathered building with faded paint and a single row of pumps. Cole slowed the motorcycle and pulled into the lot, the tires crunching over patches of ice and gravel. He killed the engine and sat for a moment, listening to the silence that followed. Emma was shivering against his chest. Even wrapped in his jacket, the cold had seeped into her small body. Her lips had a faint blue tint that made his stomach clench. He swung his leg over the bike and lifted her carefully, cradling her against him. She was so light, her arms wrapped around his neck, and she pressed her face into his shoulder. He could feel her trembling. He pushed through the glass door and stepped inside. The warmth hit him immediately, wrapping around his frozen skin. A bell chimed overhead. Behind the counter, a middle-aged woman looked up from her magazine. She had gray hair pulled back in a loose ponytail and reading glasses perched on her nose. Her name tag read Doris. Her eyes moved from Cole's face to the child in his arms. Her expression changed. The color drained from her cheeks. Her hand moved slowly toward the phone on the counter. Cole stopped walking. He understood. He knew what she saw. A large man in a flannel shirt, tattoos crawling up his arms, carrying a small girl who was clearly not his daughter. Every instinct in her body was telling her something was wrong. "Ma'am," he said quietly. His voice was steady and calm. "I know how this looks, but I need you to listen to me for just a minute." Doris did not pick up the phone, but her hand stayed near it. Her eyes darted between Cole and Emma. "I found this little girl on the side of the road about 3 miles back," Cole continued. "She was alone. No car, no adult, nothing. She's lost. She's freezing. I brought her here because I need to call the police and get her back to her family." Doris did not move. Her jaw was tight, her body tense. Emma lifted her head from Cole's shoulder. She looked at the woman behind the counter with her wide green eyes. "He's helping me find my mommy," Emma said softly. Her voice was small and tired. "I was lost." And he stopped. "He gave me his jacket because I was cold." Something shifted in Doris's face. Her eyes moved to the leather jacket wrapped around Emma's small frame, then to Cole's bare arms, reddened and rough from the cold wind. She looked at the way Emma clung to him, not with fear, but with trust. Her hand moved away from the phone. "Hold on," she said. She disappeared through a door behind the counter and returned a moment later with a thick wool blanket. She walked around the counter and wrapped it around Emma, tucking it over the leather jacket. "Let's get you warmed up, sweetheart." Emma nodded, her small chin dipping gratefully. Doris pointed to a table near the back of the store. "Set her down there. I'll get her some hot chocolate." Cole carried Emma to the table and placed her gently on the chair. She pulled the blanket tighter around herself and looked up at him with something like gratitude. He tried to smile, but his face felt frozen. Doris brought a paper cup filled with hot chocolate from the machine and set it in front of Emma. The little girl wrapped her hands around it, absorbing the heat. "There's a phone on the wall," Doris said, nodding toward the back. "Landline. It works." Cole walked to the phone and lifted the receiver. He dialed 911 and waited. When the dispatcher answered, he spoke clearly and calmly. He gave his name. He described where he had found Emma. He explained that she was safe and warm at Miller's gas station on Route 7. The dispatcher paused. Then she spoke. "Sir, a missing child report was filed about 20 minutes ago. The mother is already on her way. We're redirecting deputies to your location now." Cole exhaled slowly. The tension in his shoulders loosened just a fraction. He thanked the dispatcher and hung up the phone. He had done the right thing. Now he just had to wait. But waiting was not simple. The bell above the door chimed. A man in a work jacket walked in, stomping snow off his boots. He glanced at Cole, then at Emma sitting alone at the table, then back at Cole. His eyes narrowed. Another customer entered a few minutes later. A woman with a young son. She saw Cole and instinctively pulled her child closer. She whispered something to Doris at the counter. Doris shook her head, but the woman did not look convinced. Cole could feel the stares. He could hear the whispers beginning to spread through the small store. He saw a phone come out of a pocket. Someone angled it toward him. A small red light blinked. He knew what this looked like. He knew the video would spread before the truth had a chance to catch up. By tonight, his face could be everywhere, attached to words like kidnapper and predator. But he did not leave. Leaving now would make everything worse. It would look like guilt. He moved to the far corner of the store, putting as much distance between himself and Emma as the small space allowed. He leaned against the wall and crossed his arms, keeping his eyes on the floor. He waited for the sirens. Outside, through the frost-covered window, a dark van pulled slowly into the parking lot. The bell above the door chimed again. A man in a hunting jacket stepped inside, stomping snow from his boots. He looked around the small store, taking in the scene. His eyes landed on Cole in the corner, then moved to Emma, sitting at the table wrapped in a blanket. His jaw tightened. He walked to the counter and leaned toward Doris. His voice was low, but not low enough. "What's going on here? Who's that guy with the kid?" Doris started to explain, but another customer cut her off. A younger man in a baseball cap who had been pretending to look at the snack aisle. "I already posted a video," he said. "Big guy on a motorcycle shows up with a little girl who isn't his. People need to know." Cole heard every word. He did not move. He did not respond. He kept his back against the wall and his hands visible at his sides. A woman near the coffee machine pulled her phone from her purse. She held it up. The camera pointed at Cole. Her face was tight with suspicion. "I'm calling my husband," she said to no one in particular. "He's a volunteer firefighter. He'll know what to do." The man in the hunting jacket crossed his arms and positioned himself between Cole and the table where Emma sat. His stance was protective, his message clear. Cole understood. He had faced this kind of suspicion his entire adult life. The patches on his vest, the size of his frame, the scars across his knuckles. People saw what they expected to see. They looked at him and imagined danger. Most of the time, he let it roll off his back. He had learned long ago that proving himself to strangers was a losing game. He kept his circle small and his loyalty fierce, and he did not waste energy on people who had already made up their minds. But this time was different. This time there was a child involved, and in the court of public opinion, he could be destroyed before anyone learned the truth. Doris raised her voice, trying to cut through the tension. "Listen, everyone. This man found the girl on the side of the road. She was alone. She was freezing. He brought her here and called the police himself. I was standing right here when he did it." The man in the hunting jacket shook his head slowly. "That's what he told you. Doesn't mean it's true." The younger man with the baseball cap nodded. "Yeah, I've seen this kind of thing online. Guy pretends to be a hero, gets the kid's trust, then disappears before anyone figures out what really happened." Cole felt the weight of their stares pressing down on him. He wanted to speak. He wanted to tell them about his sister, about the years he had spent searching for missing children, about the reason he could never walk away from a kid in trouble. But he knew it would not matter. Words meant nothing when fear had already taken hold. He stayed silent. He stayed still. The woman with the phone stepped closer. "Maybe we should keep him away from the girl until the cops get here, just to be safe." "That's what he's doing," Doris said, frustration creeping into her voice. "Look at him. He moved to the corner on his own. He's not going anywhere near her." Emma had been watching from her spot at the table. She did not understand what was happening. The adults were talking in hard voices, and the nice man who had helped her was sitting alone, far away. She slid off the chair, the blanket dragging behind her. "Wait, honey." Doris moved quickly, gently catching Emma's arm. "Stay here with me, okay? Have some more hot chocolate." Emma looked up at her, confusion in her green eyes. "But I want to sit with Cole. He's my friend." The words hung in the air. The man in the hunting jacket exchanged a glance with the younger man. The woman lowered her phone slightly. Doris crouched down to Emma's level. "I know, sweetheart, but let's just wait here for a little bit. Your mommy is coming soon." Emma looked across the room at Cole. He met her eyes and gave her a small nod. It was okay. She did not need to understand. She just needed to stay safe. Emma let Doris guide her back to the table. She picked up her cup of hot chocolate and held it with both hands, but she kept glancing toward the corner. Cole watched her from across the room. He saw the confusion on her small face, the way she kept looking at him like she wanted permission to come closer. He wished he could explain. He wished he could tell her that the world was complicated, that sometimes the people who tried to help were treated like the enemy. But silence was his only protection now. Outside, the snow was falling harder. The road was disappearing under a thickening blanket of white. Visibility was dropping by the minute. Then headlights cut through the gray. A car came flying down the road too fast for the conditions. It skidded as it turned into the parking lot, fishtailing, before coming to a stop at an angle near the door. The driver's door flew open before the engine was even off. A woman stumbled out, her coat hanging open, her hair wild. She ran toward the gas station, her boots slipping on the ice. "Emma!" The name tore out of her throat like a scream. She burst through the door, nearly knocking the bell off its hinge. Her eyes were wide and red-rimmed, her breath coming in ragged gasps. She scanned the room frantically until she found her daughter sitting at the table with a blanket around her shoulders. "Mommy!" Emma slid off the chair and ran. Rachel dropped to her knees and caught her daughter in her arms, pulling her so close it looked like she might never let go. Tears streamed down her face. Her whole body shook. Then she looked up, her eyes moved across the room. She saw Doris behind the counter. She saw the customers standing near the door, and she saw the large man in the corner, the one with the leather vest and the tattoos and the face that was impossible to read. She did not know which one of them she should thank or fear. Rachel held Emma so tight the little girl could barely breathe. Her knees hit the cold tile floor, but she did not feel it. She pulled her daughter against her chest and buried her face in Emma's hair, breathing in the smell of snow and hot chocolate and something else she could not name. Relief. Terror. Love so fierce it hurt. Her whole body shook. Tears ran down her cheeks and dripped onto Emma's red coat. She could not speak. She could only hold on. Emma patted her mother's back with one small hand. "Don't cry, Mommy," she said softly. "I'm okay." Rachel let out a sound that was half laugh, half sob. She pulled back just enough to look at her daughter's face, her hands cupping Emma's cold cheeks. "Where were you? What happened? Are you hurt?" Emma shook her head. "I got lost, but the nice man found me." She pointed across the room. "He gave me his jacket because I was cold. He brought me here to get warm." Rachel's eyes followed her daughter's finger. They landed on the man in the corner. He was large, larger than anyone else in the room. His arms were bare and reddened from the cold. A leather vest covered his flannel shirt. Tattoos crawled across his skin. He stood perfectly still, his hands visible at his sides, his face impossible to read. The room was silent. No one moved. Rachel stood slowly. Her legs felt unsteady beneath her. She wiped her face with the back of her hand and took a step toward the man. Then, another. The other customers shifted. The man in the hunting jacket moved slightly, as if preparing to intervene. The woman with the phone raised it again. Rachel did not look at them. She kept her eyes on Cole. She stopped a few feet from him. She studied his face. The rough features, the heavy brow, the scars on his knuckles, the patches on his vest with names and symbols she did not recognize. And his eyes, quiet, steady, waiting. She drew in a breath that shook on the way out. "Thank you," she said. The words came out broken, barely more than a whisper. Cole nodded slowly. His voice was low and calm. "I'm glad she's safe." Rachel's face crumpled. She pressed a hand to her mouth as a fresh wave of tears came. This time they were different. Not fear, not panic. Something deeper. Gratitude that had no words. Relief that reached all the way down to her bones. The door opened behind her. Cold air swept into the room. A deputy in a brown uniform stepped inside, his hand resting near the radio on his shoulder. He paused just inside the doorway, taking in the scene with quick, assessing eyes. "Someone want to tell me what's going on here?" he asked. Doris stepped forward. She explained everything. The biker had arrived with the child. He had told her the girl was lost. He had called 911 himself. He had waited in the corner, while everyone else watched. The deputy listened without interrupting. When she finished, he turned to Rachel. "Ma'am, is this your daughter?" Rachel nodded, her arm wrapped tight around Emma's shoulders. "And this man," the deputy said, gesturing toward Cole. "Do you know him?" Rachel shook her head. "No. I've never seen him before today." She paused, her voice steadying. "But my daughter says he found her on the road. He kept her warm. He brought her here." She looked at Cole. "He saved her." The deputy turned to Emma. He crouched down to her level, his voice gentle. "Hey there, sweetheart. Can you tell me what happened?" Emma looked at him with her wide green eyes. "I was trying to walk to my grandma's house, but I got lost. It was really cold." Then the man on the motorcycle stopped. He asked if I was okay. He gave me his jacket and we rode here. She pointed at Cole again. "He's nice." The deputy straightened. He walked over to Cole and asked for identification. Cole reached into his pocket slowly, making sure every movement was visible, and handed over his license. The deputy walked outside to his cruiser. Through the frosted window, they could see him speaking into his radio, running the information. The minutes stretched out. When he returned, something in his posture had changed. The tension in his shoulders had eased. "You're clean," he said to Cole. "No warrants, no flags." He paused. "Your name came up connected to a couple of child safety organizations." Cole said nothing. He did not need to. The deputy extended his hand. Cole shook it. "Thank you for doing the right thing," the deputy said. A lot of people wouldn't have stopped. In the corner of the store, the younger man in the baseball cap lowered his phone. His face had gone pale. He tapped the screen a few times, deleting the video he had posted minutes earlier. But outside the gas station, beyond the snow-covered lot and the frozen road, the first version of the story was already spreading. The wrong version. The one without context. The one that showed a biker with a little girl and asked questions that assumed the worst. The truth would follow eventually. It always did, but it would have to run fast to catch up. Two versions of the story raced across the internet before the sun went down. The first version had a head start. It was the video posted by the man in the baseball cap before he thought to delete it. The footage was shaky, shot from across the gas station, but the image was clear enough. A large man in a leather vest, a small girl wrapped in a blanket. The caption beneath the video asked a question designed to spark outrage. It used words like suspicious and alarming. It called on people to share, to warn others, to keep their children safe. By the time the man deleted the original post, it had already been downloaded and reposted dozens of times. Screenshots spread through local community groups. Comments piled up beneath the shared links. Strangers who had never met Cole Brannigan decided they knew exactly what kind of man he was. The second version came an hour later. Doris had waited until the deputy left before pulling out her phone. She sat behind the counter of the gas station and typed out the truth in plain, simple words. She explained how the biker had walked in carrying a freezing child. She described how he had called 911 himself, how he had stepped back without being asked, how he had stayed in the corner while the room filled with suspicion. She ended with a sentence that would eventually be quoted by local news. That man saved that little girl's life, and people need to know it. Her post spread too, but slower. The truth always moves slower than the lie. Local news caught wind of both versions by evening. A reporter called the sheriff's office and asked for a statement. The deputy who had responded to the scene confirmed the facts without hesitation. Cole Brannigan was not a suspect. He had never been a suspect. He was the reason Emma Holloway was safe tonight. The correction went out on the 10 o'clock news. But by then, the first version had already reached thousands of screens. People had already made up their minds. Some of them would never see the update. Cole sat alone in his apartment, watching the snow fall outside his window. His phone buzzed on the table beside him. Then again. Then again. Brothers from the club were reaching out. They had seen the posts. Some had seen the video. Others had seen the comments that followed. They wanted to know if he was okay. They wanted to know if they needed to ride. Cole answered each message the same way. Stand down. It's handled. Don't make this bigger than it is. He put the phone face down on the table and stared at the wall. He did not want to talk. He did not want to explain. He just wanted silence. A knock came at the door an hour later. Heavy, familiar. Cole did not move. The knock came again. Then a voice. Open up, Shepard. I know you're in there. Cole exhaled slowly. He crossed the room and opened the door. Ray Munoz stood in the hallway, a six-pack in one hand and a stubborn look on his face. He was shorter than Cole, but built like a tank, with a shaved head and a salt and pepper beard. The brothers called him Dodger, a name he had earned decades ago for reasons no one talked about anymore. Told you to stay home, Cole said. Ray pushed past him into the apartment. Yeah, I heard you. Didn't listen. He set the beer on the counter and pulled 2 bottles free. He handed one to Cole without asking. They sat in the living room, the television off, the only light coming from the street lamp outside the window. The silence stretched between them, comfortable and familiar. Ray was the first to speak. How you doing? And don't give me the answer you gave everyone else. Cole turned the bottle in his hands. He did not respond right away. The minutes passed. The snow continued to fall. When Cole finally spoke, his voice was quiet. She looked just like her, Ray. Standing there in that red coat, alone in the snow. He paused. I couldn't keep riding. I couldn't pretend I didn't see her. Ray nodded slowly. He did not need to ask who Cole was talking about. I keep thinking about what could have happened, Cole continued. If I had been 10 minutes later, if I hadn't taken that road, if I had just looked away. His jaw tightened. I can't stop seeing her face. Ray was quiet for a long moment. He took a slow drink from his bottle and set it down on the table. You know what I think? He said finally. I think sometimes the universe gives you something. Not to fix what got broken. You can't do that. But to prove something to yourself. He looked at Cole. To prove you were always the kind of man who would stop. Who would try. Even when it costs you. Cole did not answer. He sat in the dim light and let the words settle somewhere deep. Outside, his phone buzzed again. Someone else had seen the video. Someone else was deciding who he was. But in this room, in this silence, Cole already knew. Rachel opened her eyes to pale morning light filtering through the curtains. For a moment she did not move. She lay still, listening to the silence of the apartment, waiting for the panic to return. Then she remembered. Emma was home. Emma was safe. She pushed back the covers and walked down the hallway to her daughter's room. The door was open a few inches. She pushed it wider and looked inside. Emma was asleep, her small body curled beneath the blankets, her arms wrapped around the stuffed dinosaur she had carried everywhere since she was 3. Her breathing was slow and steady. Her cheeks had color again. Rachel leaned against the doorframe and watched her daughter sleep. Her hands were trembling. She pressed them against her sides, trying to make them stop. She kept replaying the moment she had burst through the gas station door, the terror that had filled her chest, the way her eyes had scanned the room, searching for Emma, not knowing if she would find her daughter safe or gone forever. And then the relief, so sharp it had almost knocked her to the floor. But something else stayed with her too. The man in the corner, the one everyone had been watching with hard, suspicious eyes, the one who had stood apart, hands visible, saying nothing while the room decided what kind of person he was. He had given his jacket to her child. He had carried her to warmth when no one else was there. And in return, he had been treated like a criminal. Rachel walked to the kitchen and made a cup of coffee she would not drink. She sat at the table and pulled up the police report on her phone. She found his name at the bottom of the document, Cole Brannigan. She typed the name into a search bar. The results appeared instantly. There were 2 versions of the story. The first showed a shaky video and ugly accusations. The comments beneath it were full of fear and judgment. People who had never met Cole were certain they knew what he was. The second version told the truth. Doris's post, the news report, the deputy's statement, but it was the other links that made Rachel pause. Articles about a motorcycle club that raised money for foster children, photos from charity rides for missing kids, a short mention of a man named Shepard, who had helped organize events for nearly 15 years. She scrolled further and found an old newspaper clipping. It was from decades ago, faded and scanned. A 7-year-old girl named Lily Brannigan had disappeared from her neighborhood. She had never been found. Rachel set her phone down. Her throat felt tight. She understood now. She understood why he had stopped, why he could not look away. She picked up her phone again and opened the camera. She did not rehearse what she wanted to say. She just pressed record. She spoke simply, clearly, her voice steady despite the emotion beneath it. She told the truth about what had happened. She described the cold road, the empty afternoon, the stranger who had stopped when no one else was there. She explained what Cole had done and what would have happened to Emma if he had kept writing. She ended with a single sentence. "My daughter is alive because of him, and I will not let anyone say otherwise." She posted the video publicly. She did not add filters or music. She let the truth speak for itself. Within hours, it began to spread. People shared it with new captions. Comments filled with gratitude and apology replaced the accusations. The tide was turning. That evening, Rachel sat down at her computer and searched for Cole's motorcycle club. She found their public page and clicked the message button. She typed slowly, choosing her words with care. She thanked him again. She asked if they could meet somewhere, face to face, so she could say it properly. And she asked if Emma could see him one more time. She wanted her daughter to remember him clearly, not as a stranger in a confusing moment, but as the man who had saved her life. She pressed send and waited. Cole pulled his motorcycle into the parking lot and killed the engine. He sat for a moment, his hands resting on the handlebars, his eyes fixed on the small diner ahead. It was a simple place, faded siding, a neon sign that flickered in the afternoon light. The kind of diner that served coffee in ceramic mugs and had the same menu it had 20 years ago. Rachel had asked to meet him here. It was where she worked, and today was her day off. He had faced down trouble many times in his life. He had ridden through storms and stood his ground in situations most people would run from. But sitting in this parking lot, knowing what waited inside, he felt something unfamiliar tighten in his chest. He was nervous. This was not about danger. This was something harder. This was letting someone see him not as a biker or a stranger or a name attached to a viral video. This was being seen as a person. He swung his leg over the bike and walked toward the door. The bell chimed as he stepped inside. The warm air carried the smell of coffee and fried eggs. A few customers sat at the counter. Others filled booths along the windows. He spotted Rachel near the back, sitting in a booth with sunlight falling across the table. Emma was beside her, bent over a paper placemat, a crayon gripped in her small hand. Emma looked up. Her eyes found Cole across the room, and her whole face changed. A smile spread across her features. She waved, her hand moving in quick, eager motions. Cole felt something loosen in his chest. He walked toward them. He slid into the booth across from Rachel and Emma. For a moment, no one spoke. The silence was not uncomfortable. It was full, waiting. Then Rachel reached across the table and slid a piece of paper toward him. It was folded once, the edges slightly crinkled. Cole opened it carefully. It was a drawing. Crayon lines filled the page in bright, uneven strokes. There was a motorcycle, large and dark. A man standing next to it, wearing an oversized jacket, and beside him, a little girl in a red coat. Above the figures, in wobbly letters that leaned in different directions, were two words. Thank you. Cole stared at the drawing. His throat felt tight. He did not trust himself to speak. Emma wanted you to have it, Rachel said softly. She worked on it all morning. Cole looked at Emma. She was watching him with hopeful eyes, waiting to see if he liked it. It's perfect, he said quietly. I'll keep it somewhere safe. Emma smiled and went back to her coloring. Rachel's hands wrapped around her coffee cup. She took a breath and began to speak. She told him what his actions had meant. She talked about the fear she had carried for years, long before that afternoon. The divorce that had left her scrambling. The double shifts that kept her away from Emma more than she wanted. The constant, gnawing fear that she was not enough. I always felt like I was doing this alone, she said. Like no one would be there if something went wrong. She paused, her voice dropping. But you were there, a stranger, on an empty road, and you stopped. Cole listened. He did not interrupt. He let her speak until she was finished. When the silence returned, he looked down at the drawing still resting on the table. He ran his thumb along the edge of the paper. I had a sister, he said. The words came slowly, each one carrying weight. Her name was Lily. She disappeared when I was 12, walking home from a friend's house. 4 blocks. She never made it. Rachel's expression shifted. Her eyes softened. They never found her, Cole continued. My parents fell apart. My father disappeared into a bottle. My mother held on as long as she could. He paused. When I saw Emma standing on that road, alone in the snow, I saw Lily. I saw the moment someone should have stopped, the moment someone should have been there. His voice was rough but steady. I couldn't drive past her. I couldn't live with myself if I had. Rachel reached across the table and placed her hand over his. She did not say anything. She did not need to. Around them, the diner continued its quiet rhythm. Forks clinked against plates. Conversations murmured in the background. A few customers glanced toward their booth. Some of them recognized the man in the leather vest. They had seen his face on their phones, attached to stories that shifted depending on who was telling them, but the whispers that passed between them now were different. They carried something new. Understanding. The video Rachel posted did not stop spreading. It moved through small towns and suburbs, passed between parents and teachers and grandparents who recognized something true in her words. Local news stations picked it up. A reporter from a regional affiliate drove out to interview Rachel at the diner. The segment aired on 3 stations across 2 states. Within days, the story had shifted completely. The accusations that had spread so quickly began to fade. In their place, a different picture emerged. People started searching for Cole's club. They found the charity rides, the fundraisers, the quiet work that had gone on for years without headlines or attention. Letters arrived at the clubhouse. Handwritten notes from parents whose children had been escorted to court by bikers who made them feel safe. Cards from hospital administrators thanking the club for visiting sick kids on weekends. Messages from survivors who had felt alone until a group of strangers in leather showed up and stood beside them. Cole read each one. He did not know what to say. He had never done any of it for recognition. In Ridgecrest, something began to change. When Cole rode through town, some people looked at him differently. A woman at the grocery store nodded as he passed. A man at the gas station raised his hand in a small wave. Children pointed at his motorcycle with curiosity instead of fear. It was strange. It was uncomfortable. But it was real. 3 weeks after the rescue, Cole received a phone call from a woman at Ridgecrest Elementary. She introduced herself as the assistant principal. She explained that the school was planning a child safety awareness event for the spring. They wanted to teach kids what to do if they got lost, how to identify safe adults, how to ask for help without fear. She asked if Cole and his club would be willing to participate. Cole listened in silence. When she finished, he told her he would call her back. That night, he sat with Ray at the clubhouse, a half-empty cup of coffee between them. I'm not good at this stuff, Cole said. Standing up in front of people. Talking. Ray leaned back in his chair. You talked to Emma just fine. You talked to her mom. That was different, was it? Ray shook his head slowly. Brother, this isn't about comfort. It's about what it could mean for those kids. For their families. He paused. This is legacy. What we leave behind. Cole stared at his coffee. The silence stretched between them. Finally, he nodded. On the day of the event, Cole rode to the elementary school with 6 of his brothers behind him. The rumble of their engines drew eyes from every direction. Parents looked up from their phones. Children pressed their faces against classroom windows. Cole parked his bike and walked toward the gymnasium. His boots echoed on the polished floor. 200 children sat on the bleachers, their parents standing along the walls. Every face turned toward him. His chest felt tight. His hands wanted to shake, but he walked to the front of the room and faced them anyway. He spoke simply. He did not use big words or rehearsed phrases. He told them that heroes did not always look the way they expected. He told them that being brave sometimes meant asking for help. He said the world was full of people who would stop, who would listen, who would protect them if they gave those people a chance. His voice was rough at first, but it steadied as he went. He talked about safety, about trust, about the difference between fear and caution. The children listened. Their parents listened too. When he finished, the room was quiet for a moment. Then applause filled the gymnasium. In the front row, Emma sat beside her mother. She was wearing her red coat. When Cole's eyes found her, she grinned and waved. Cole felt something shift in his chest. Something old and heavy began to loosen. After the event, a woman approached him near the exit. She introduced herself as a journalist from a regional magazine. She said she wanted to write a longer piece about Cole and his club, not just this rescue, but everything that had led to it. The history, the loss, the years of quiet work. She wanted people to understand who these bikers really were. Cole looked at Ray, standing a few feet away. Ray met his eyes and gave a single, slow nod. Cole turned back to the journalist. He took a breath. Okay, he said quietly. Let's talk. 1 year had passed since the afternoon that changed everything. Emma sat at a small desk in her kindergarten classroom, her tongue poking out in concentration as she drew a picture with thick crayons. She was 6 now, taller than she had been. Her hair longer, her smile quicker. She had mostly forgotten the details of the day she got lost, the cold, the fear, the way the snow had made everything look the same. Children were resilient that way. Their memories softened the hard edges and kept only what mattered. But she remembered Cole. She called him the motorcycle man. She waved every time he rode past her grandmother's house, which he did more often than he used to. Sometimes he waved back. Sometimes he just nodded, a small gesture that meant more than words. Rachel had found steadier ground in the years since that frozen afternoon. She had taken a job at a nonprofit that worked with families in crisis. The hours were long, but the work meant something. She volunteered with the same child safety organization Cole supported, and she had spoken at 2 community events about what happened that winter day. She told the story simply, the way she had in the video. A lost child, an empty road, a stranger who stopped. People listened. People shared. The story kept spreading. Long after the headlines had faded, Cole still rode. The road was still where he found himself, where the noise in his head quieted and the weight on his chest eased. He visited his mother's grave every year on the anniversary of her passing. He brought flowers when he could find them. He sat by her headstone and talked to her the way he used to. But now he also stopped by Rachel's house sometimes. Not often. Just enough to check in. Just enough to see Emma running across the yard, to hear her laugh, to remind himself why he had pulled over that day. He thought about Lily less painfully now. The wound had not healed. It never would. But he had learned that carrying pain did not mean being crushed by it. Sometimes it meant using it. Sometimes the weight became fuel. On the anniversary of the rescue, Rachel posted a simple photo online. It showed Emma and Cole standing together at a community fair. Emma was holding his hand, looking up at him with a grin. Cole was looking down at her. Something soft in his expression that the camera had caught by accident. The caption beneath the photo read, "1 year ago, a stranger chose to stop. Today, he's family." The post spread farther than any of the others. It was shared thousands of times in the first day. Comments flooded in from parents and grandparents, from survivors and strangers, from people who had never met Cole but felt like they knew him. Cole saw the post late that night. He was alone in his apartment, the television off, the only light coming from the screen of his phone. He looked at the photo for a long time. Emma's smile. His own face, caught in a moment he did not remember. He did not cry. But something inside him shifted. Something that had been clenched tight for 30 years began to loosen. He typed a message to Rachel. Just 2 words. Thank you. Her reply came a few minutes later. No. Thank you. For everything. Cole put down the phone. He walked to the window and looked out at the night sky. The stars were faint behind a thin layer of clouds, but he could see them if he looked hard enough. Somewhere out there, he thought, Lily was watching. And maybe, just maybe, she was proud. He stood there for a long time, letting the silence fill the room. He thought about all the roads he had traveled, all the miles behind him and the miles still ahead. He thought about the boy he had been at 12 years old, standing in his family's living room, waiting for a sister who would never come home. He thought about the man he had become in the years since, the scars, the silence, the slow, stubborn choice to keep showing up. He had spent so long running from the pain, but he was not running anymore. The next morning, Cole woke before dawn. He dressed in his usual clothes, pulled on his boots, and walked outside to his motorcycle. The air was cool but not cold. Spring was coming. He climbed onto the bike and started the engine. The familiar rumble settled into his bones. He pulled out of the lot and turned onto the open road. The sun rose ahead of him, painting the sky in shades of gold and pink. The road stretched out long and empty, curving toward the horizon. He was not riding away from something anymore. He was riding toward it. Purpose, peace, the quiet knowledge that one choice, on one frozen afternoon, had changed everything. The motorcycle hummed beneath him. The wind pressed against his jacket, and Cole Brannigan, the man they called Shepherd, rode into the morning light. Some stories end with answers, others end with beginnings. This one ends with both. A stranger stopped on a cold road. A little girl went home safe. A man found something he had been searching for his entire life. And, somewhere, in living rooms and kitchens, on phones and laptops, people are still watching, still listening, still believing that the world is full of those who will stop, who will help, who will protect. If this story reached you, if it reminded you of something true, then it has already done its work. And if you want to be part of bringing more stories like this into the world, there are ways to stay connected, to be part of what we are building together. Because stories like this are not just told, they are carried by people like you.